All right. My classroom dynamic is a classroom full of 29 students. I only, in that class, have two language learners. One just came to my classroom from Peru, and the other one has been in the United States since he was born and does not actually speak Spanish at home, but is in the ELL program because he is Spanish speaking, but he speaks mostly English in his home. So the first concrete example, oh, and then some of the dynamics of the classroom. So we use computers a lot. Another dynamic of the classroom, it's very organized. We do a lot of groupings. I do a lot of precision partnering. So these students are used to working in groups. So even as ELL or ESL students, these students work in groups all of the time. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I'm a very groups-oriented kind of teacher and very hands-on type of teacher, and I appeal to those types of learners as well. So the first concrete example I have of a student is one time my student who first has come to the United States, he's from Peru. They were supposed to pick out a reading book for the month of September, and they are supposed to read a book every single month. And this particular student, he was getting out his book, and I said, well, what book did you bring? And he said, Wat Phong. Wat Phong. And I thought to myself, what is he saying? And I was like, Wat Phong, Wat Phong. And then he pulled it out. I said, oh, yes, White Fang. Okay, yeah. And he's like, yes, White Fang. And he ended up saying it correctly, but he first said Wat Phong. And I originally, I didn't correct him in the sense where I said, oh, that's incorrect, but I did say, oh, White Fang, yes, yes. And so kind of like you do with a young child who's first learning our English language, right? Who's first learning how to speak. The second concrete example I have actually comes from the exact same student. He, at the beginning, wouldn't talk a lot. He's very shy. And so I try and get him to express anything that he can in English. Sometimes I'll allow him to write in Spanish, and then I have him try and translate it into English for me. Other times he just writes in English, and he's done really, really well. The second concrete example I have is from that student and him trying to speak English really for the first time. I met him in the hallway before he was in my class, but the first time I actually heard him speak and say English words was in my classroom. And he had a paper, and I asked him, can I have that? And in my broken Spanish, I was asking him if I could have his paper. And he said, take home, finish. Take home, finish. And so I understood what he was saying with that. And because I understood, I said, yeah, take it home and finish it. Yeah. And so he said, okay, okay, sounds good. And thumbs up. That's kind of our little thing that we do is thumbs up. And I said to him, bien hecho, which means good job or well done kind of idea. And so he is starting to learn and starting to try out English. And I notice the more he gets encouraged by me and other classmates, the more that he actually tries to express himself in the English language, which is really, really great. My third and final concrete example comes from that same class, but it comes from a different student. This student is actually a level 3 ESL and a level 3-4, so he's mostly 3s and some 4s. And in that particular class, he actually helps me translate for this other student who is at a level 1. And he helps me out a lot. And that is an example of language as well. But the example I'm going to come up with is one from a student who's more further along within the ESL program. So he is, like I said, a level 3 or a level 4. We're trying to push him to be a level 4. And one thing I realized about this example was that an ESL student or an ELL student does not necessarily mean that they don't know English, right? So this student knows English very well. Obviously, it's his native language. Well, technically, it's his second language, but he speaks it at home. So speaking English at home has given him the advantage. And what we're working on with him is being able to summarize a text. He gets the words go and went mixed up a lot. And so instead of saying, I'll go to the store, tomorrow, he'll say I will went to the store tomorrow. So he gets the tenses mixed up between go and went. He gets those mixed up a lot. And so one of the concrete examples, another one I have, is when we're working on writing summaries with him. That's one of his ESL goals for this year. And so he had read a chapter in his silent reading book or his independent reading book, and I asked him to summarize the text. And I asked him to try and use go and went in a correct fashion. And so I had him verbally give me the answers, and he used go and went correctly conversationally, which was really great. And I think it's a lot of linguistics with that too, the tense of go and went, and when do you use one and not the other kind of idea. But the reason I chose this example was because when he wrote it, it didn't quite come out right. When he wrote it, it didn't seem worded correctly. He mixed up go and went again, and so I'm still working with this student as to how we can not mix up those two words, go and went. And so I'm curious as to what other people have to say about this phenomenon or this idea that a student can conversationally say it correctly, but then when they're writing, it kind of is incorrect. And that's the same thing with really a lot of students that I have, whether they're ESL students or not. I have this type of issue, I guess, or problem with a lot of different students, that verbally they can say it, but when it comes to writing it and explaining it, it's a lot harder. So this particular ESL student, that's going to continue to be a goal for him this whole entire year. And those are my concrete examples.